Now, Africa's oldest game reserve is being threatened by coal speculators. Yesterday, the Daily Maverick reported that coal hunters have encircled the Hluhluwe Imfolozi Game Reserve in northern KwaZulu-Natal. To discuss, we're joined by environmental lawyer Jeremy Ridl. He represents the Umfolozi Big Five Trust that administers community areas proclaimed as reserves incorporated into the Hluhluwe Imfolozi Park. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Ridl. So, the Daily Maverick says that the prospecting blocks now surround this entire game park. You obviously don't agree with that. How was it allowed to happen? How did it get to this?
Okay, how did it happen? Well, as you know, we are still very coal hungry in this country, and that's not something I'm going to talk about right now. But the area around the greater Hluhluwe Imfolozi Park, the southern portion of it, which is all community-owned land, does have coal deposits in it and has been the target of coal mining for a long time. Now, the problem that we have is that we're told prospecting is not damaging. It's not an invasive procedure. We mustn't be too concerned about any environmental impact at this stage because prospecting is relatively benign. The problem that I have is that there's a lack of logic in allowing prospecting without looking at whether mining is going to be feasible. And when I say feasible, I don't mean technically feasible or whether the coal is going to be accessible. I talk about whether mining being the best option for that land. That, as you know, Hluhluwe Imfolozi is one of the oldest game reserves in the world. It's famous. It's got rhino being shown there. It was where the start of Ian Player's campaign to save the area that we're talking about, the mining areas across the river from the wilderness area that Ian Player established. So there's no debate about whether this is a valuable piece of wildlife real estate. But again, that's not really the issue that we're concerned about here, is that in the establishment of Hluhluwe Imfolozi, over the many years to establish the park, people have been forcibly removed, and that's created a lot of tension between local communities and conservation. The conservation authorities have worked well to bring down those barriers, but we're going to go through the same process where these community tracts of land to the south of the reserve and adjoining it, there's 14,000 hectares, 7,000 of which has already been incorporated into the park. This is a joint venture between Izimbelo KZN Wildlife and the Umfolozi Big Five Trust with the communities, and two very good lodges have been built as the start of a tourism. But a terrible thunderstorm in the background here.
Yeah, Mr. Ridl, let me come in there. You only cut for a second or so, but thank you for that explanation. What happens, what does the law say? So there are these valuable mining or this valuable potential below the surface, but can't we rest assured that there's a higher standard for actual mining rights over and above prospecting rights, and the Department of Environment has to get involved? Doesn't our law allow that department to look at the conservation value of the area?
The communities have been left out of the consultation process. They have gone to court in this very area and have successfully challenged the government's decisions. It's not a question of whether they can mine safely. It's a much bigger issue. Assuming that the prospecting can be kept under control and assuming that the controls are good, there are no examples in this country of where coal mining has been undertaken safely and not left a bad legacy. The problem for the communities is that, again, they're being removed. They're now faced with mining that is going to take a few years probably decades for the mining resource to be exploited. And then there's the promise that they'll get their land back. But what it does in the meanwhile is it blocks all the opportunities sustainable lives now. So for short-term profit, a few people gain where a community is sterilized for.
All right. Well, what a pity, Mr. Ridl. Your line keeps on cutting. Perhaps that is due to the thunderstorms. I had so many more questions to ask. And of course, the big issue is around the politics as well. Are we really going to be pushing coal mining? There is going to be this global hunger for coal. But I think because of that line, let's try again at another point. That was environmental lawyer Jeremy Ridl.